Hi, this is Ned Siegfried from Siegfried & Jensen. As proud sponsors of Beliefcast, we hope you are inspired by Todd's weekly podcasts, which contain so many courageous stories of recovery and personal growth. Remember, it's not what happened in the past that matters, it's what happens in the future. We invite you all to work hard and be optimistic about your future. Enjoy today's podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Inspires Beliefcast. Thank you so much for tuning in week after week. Love you guys. I want to thank our sponsors, Siegfried & Jensen, Wasatch Recovery, Veracity Networks, and Hill Institute. You guys are fantastic. Thank you for all your support. I love you. And I want to thank for you guys just for tuning in and sharing these amazing stories that we have on. And I've had some amazing guests, and today's no different. Today we are joined with Caitlin Hansen. Caitlin, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited for you to be on and to come share your story. You have a very busy schedule, so I just feel like honored that you're even here. Kind of blows my mind. So a little bit about Caitlin. She's a world traveler, adventure seeker, which we're going to talk a lot about. She's a television host, speaker, media trainer. She's the founder of Barefoot Communications, where she transforms CEOs and executives from nervous speakers to expert communicators and successful leaders. And I can't wait to learn more about that. You graduated from Brigham Young University with a BA in communications and broadcast journalism. You spent well over 15 years of experience in television news, and then you also do professional coaching, media training, and recently you could watch you on KUTV News or KUTV News, CBS in Salt Lake City, where you were on a show called Silicon Slopes. Is that correct? Did I say that right?
I was on a show called Fresh Living at KUTV.
That's where I got
yes,
it. Yeah.
No, I'm sure I'm saying confusing information. Silicon Slopes is the new gig where I'm doing like a digital newscast for them.
Yeah. Okay. Love it. And then you're doing a podcast. We just talked about that called Living Unscripted.
Yeah.
And you've been doing that about a year now, you said?
Yeah. My co-host Brooke and I, co-host, best friend, therapist, all the things she is to me. We host that every week.
That's awesome. And obviously when you're not working, I mean, this is one of the things I love about you, Caitlin, is just the way you just live life to the fullest. You're an adventure seeker. You love to ski. You're in the mountains. You train hard. You work out hard. All these amazing things. And that's one of the reasons why I reached out to you, is because just the way you live your life. I think a lot of us, and I've been there, where I don't live life to the fullest sometimes, where I'm just existing. I'm not really living. So I really appreciate that about you. And I know you're not perfect, and I know you have your moments, but that's why I have you on here. So thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to see how other people perceive you.
Yeah, right.
But it's not wrong. I'm in the mountains a lot, so.
Well, let's start off. Let's let people know, where did you grow up? Tell us a little bit about your childhood.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was born in Berkeley, California. I grew up in the East Bay, Alamo area of San Francisco.
Nice.
My parents are actually from Utah. They went to East High School, but went out there and had my brother and I. Okay. And then we moved as a family back to Utah when I was in junior high. Not back to Utah for us, but for the first time. So, spent a lot of my childhood from birth till even now in Sun Valley, Idaho, which is a beautiful sweet spot in my heart, and probably feels the most like home, just spending most of my time in that valley growing up, most of our free time. And Utah is definitely home now. People ask me where I'm from, and I say, so I'll tell you Alamo, California, but this place feels like where I'm from for sure.
Especially with all the stuff you love doing, this kind of fits it perfectly.
This is
for
Mecca.
You. Right.
It would take a lot. I mean, it would be really important to get me to leave here again.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell us about, how were you as a child? I mean, again, you're this go-getter, driven person. Were you like that when you were younger?
I was pretty shy as a child. I don't know, just shy, a little quieter, not so outgoing. It does come as a surprise to a lot of people that don't know me, that I work in TV and I speak and do all this, and I'm a total introvert.
Wow.
So that was kind of more of what came out when I was a child. I just remember being like, do they want to be friends with me?
Really?
You know, a little more reserved.
Sure.
My brother, on the other hand, is like totally outgoing, always has been, has always been like, just, this is who I am, showing up. And I was definitely a little more timid as a child.
Okay.
Super sensitive. Still am today. I've learned to channel it. But I feel like I'm really sensitive to all the feels. And that was definitely that was one of those. Little kid Caitlin too.
Yeah. Well, so were you, I mean, you're so adventurous now. Were you that way too? Or was it that timid part of you kept you from doing those things back then?
No, I was definitely adventurous. Okay. Luckily, I was raised by two parents who are just like that. My dad, they're both 69 years old now. And my dad is still like riding mountain bikes. I'm chasing him up mountains. Really? He's always, I just did a run through the Grand Canyon called Rim to Rim this spring.
Way. Wow.
And my friend and I trained for a long time, and it was 25 miles and a lot of elevation. It was just so fun. And my dad found it, like after I finished, he and I were chatting, and he the next day signed up to do it. I'm like, okay, so he's going to do it when he's 70 years old.
That's amazing. 25
miles through the Grand Canyon. So yes, I've been chasing him around my whole life. My mom and he are excellent skiers.
Right.
We camped, we mountain biked, we did all the outdoorsy things growing up. So I definitely had that instilled in me from a really young age.
Well, and that also probably helped you eventually down the road to not be so timid, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I think shy is a better word than timid.
Shy,
I was just definitely like a little more reserved.
Okay.
Sorry, not anymore. I've grown out of that.
Yeah. Just a little side note. I did the Spartan race, the Beast race for the first time ever back in July. Hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but also the most when I crossed that finish line, I was like, that was like, I got emotional,
Yeah.
And again, do you ever feel that way? Like when you do these big races and like when you get through it, do you just kind of feel that emotion of, oh, man, I just accomplished that?
Yes, totally. I felt that way at the end of the Grand Canyon run. I did another run this summer called a Cirque series, and totally felt that way. Yeah. I also think for me, my friend and I were talking about this the other day. Sometimes when there's a lot going on emotionally, I do really well to be like, I'm going to go run around the mountains. I'm going to move my body and kind of work this through. And often just doing something hard brings that emotion out.
For sure.
Like pushing my physical self really hard for some reason gives space. I mean, I don't know if anyone listening has ever been on like a run or a hard workout, and all of a sudden as soon as they start working hard, it's like this opening of all the emotional stuff, and you're like, I'm crying mid-workout. What's happening right now?
I know. I've had that. I've been running before, and all of a sudden I just get emotional. And it's interesting too. It's like, what they call that, the runner's high. Mm-hmm. And it's like this inspiration starts flowing. You're like, oh yeah, this I'm going to share this with my family. And it's pretty amazing how that works and how important that is for our mental fitness and health.
Totally. On that note, I have also, in the last almost 2 years, I had, if we want, we can touch on this, but I had a surgery that was pretty rough for me, and I wasn't walking after on my own. Mm-hmm. And I feel like now when I accomplish things, physical feats like the race I did or that long run, that's where a lot of that emotion comes out. I kind of made a commitment to myself back then. I was like, I will never take my physical body for granted again. Right? Yeah. Like I get up, I work out at the gym, I ski, I run, I bike. And when that's all taken from you for a minute, I mean, I never thought I wouldn't get it back. But in those initial moments, I was like, wow, I never sat as much as I do now and thought, thank you for letting me run up this mountain and feel good,
Wow. Well, let's talk about that since you've brought that up. We were going to talk about it anyways, about what you went through. You had a health scare, obviously, and you had to have surgery. And tell us about what happened and again, just that experience that you had with it.
Yeah. A little background. I've had gut pain, whatever. I don't know how to define it because we still don't really know the cause of it since I was a little girl. My mom and dad said they remember me always complaining that my stomach hurt like around dinner time, and we're like, okay, picky kid, eat your food.
Yeah, right.
And then in junior high and high school, when I started like subbing myself out of soccer games in pain, they were like, okay, this is not made up, right?
Right.
So did a lot of testing for like 7 years through high school and into college, and finally when I was 21 years old, I was diagnosed with celiac disease. Easy. It wasn't a big thing, like stop eating gluten. It just wasn't big back then. So I think it took a while.
Yeah.
And that helped a lot. which is great. I still live gluten-free lifestyle, but
Sure.
all of the stomach pain didn't go away. And I mean, years ago, before this surgery, it started getting bad, and I would have these episodes. One night I was in a lot of pain and kept waking up on the floor unconscious, realizing I was living alone, kept realizing I was blacking out. And so I'd wake up and look at my phone and be like, I need to call 911. And then I would black out and wake up and be like, I can't get to my phone.
That's scary.
Ended up finally getting a hold of my mom, who came to my house and found me on the bathroom floor, drove me to the hospital. I was like in an unmarked building. Long story short, where I was living at that point in my life. So an ambulance didn't know where I was. And I mean, they did every test in the book and sent me home like, we don't know what's wrong. And that was kind of the diagnosis for most of my life. I've actually like reached out on Instagram to like the world, but like, if anyone knows what these symptoms are, right? Yeah. And I still am not sure, but after seeing every specialist for every organ in my body, my heart, my brain, just to be like, am I losing my mind?
Right.
They found 4 tumors on my liver. They were benign. They were like, we don't know why this would be causing pain, but we could go in and remove them. We could also try to remove your gallbladder. I mean, at this point, we're just like throwing ideas at the wall.
Yeah.
And that was not my first choice, but I went to a liver specialist. We went in and said, you know, you're going to have some laparoscopic sites. You'll be here for 2 days.
Right.
You know, you'll go home. You'll be great. Hopefully this will be all better. Like it was on nerve endings, maybe. I mean, whatever. I was nervous. I'd never have surgery. I don't like even getting a shot. So this is not, if I get a paper cut, I have passed out from blood.
Really?
So hospitals are not my favorite place in the world to be. But I went in thinking, okay, this is going to be easy. And my first memory is waking up 5 days later, and
really,
I'm going to get emotional, but, I remember like coming to and beeping lights and then passing out. But my real first memory was waking up. I could tell there was a lot going on. I had at one point like a tube down my throat. And I saw my brother and my mom in this hospital room leaning over me, and they were just kind of looking at me. Yeah. And I asked how long I had been there, and they told me. And I mean, that initially I was like, oh, something went wrong. Yeah. And then I said, am I going to die? And my brother just looked at my mom to respond. And I mean, when you have no idea what happened, like I don't even remember the last 5 days.
Yeah.
And she, of course, said no. And in hindsight, like, of course I wasn't going to die, but I had no idea what was going on. Yeah. And just my brother not wanting to respond and having my mom respond. I remember in that moment being like, what is happening?
What's going on here?
So things just, I don't know what happened. It didn't go as planned. I have bigger scars than the laparoscopic sites, which is just a thing. And I've worked through, and I'm still working through that. But they got in, they took it out. They took out the tumors, which weren't big, but they were on my liver. Yeah. They did a resection of the bottom part of my liver because my liver was inflamed. And I just didn't recover like they thought I was going to. So, some complications later, they wouldn't let me leave the hospital till I could walk on my own, and that wasn't working. So having someone help you stand out of bed to go to the bathroom, I mean, I was determined. I was like, I'm going to get up. And I remember the first time I went to get up and I was like, I need to go to the bathroom. And they're like, okay. So, I mean, TMI, but catheter out, let's try this. And I basically got to the edge of the bed to stand up on my own, and I couldn't even stand on my own 2 feet. So standing, finally walking with a walker through the hospital. I mean, the first day I remember I walked like 10 feet. And then when they finally sent me home, I had to stay with my mom because my incisions are through my abdomen, so I couldn't sit up on my own. And I mean, it was definitely a struggle. I mean, a week after my surgery, I walked around the neighborhood, like the 5-house neighborhood with my mom, and that was a huge success. It was just harder physically than I've ever experienced. Wow. Any physical feat I've done in my life with athletics or, it was challenging mentally and physically. I was in more pain than I've ever experienced physically. Wow. And not being able to move my body, get out of bed, use the restroom on my own, walk on my own. That's a hard thing for someone that wants to run around the mountains, you know?
Right. Yeah. Here you are. You're this adventurous person. Now you're dealing with this. Tell us, what was your like emotional state. Again, I like, what emotions were you going through when you're like, I can barely even walk to the bathroom right now? What emotions were you feeling at that point?
I think, as you said that, the initial thought is fear. Of the unknown, probably. Like, am I going to get back? It wasn't like, when am I going to be able to run and ski next? It was like, I can't move on my own. When is that going to come back? Is it going to come back? Did I make the right decision by having this surgery, which is a whole other thing? And I just remember feeling scared. Probably was the biggest thing.
No, that's
of not knowing.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. And did they end up figuring out what was going on, or do they still not know?
No, unfortunately. And I've been back to the hospital since that surgery with kind of those same episodes. Yeah. It's like a series of events that happens when I just end up blacking out. And honestly, I don't have an answer. I mean, it's some of it probably me panicking myself to black out, because that first initial episode, I'll call it, I mean, I couldn't stay conscious. I was alone in my house in the middle of the night. So I think that when the pain starts to come back, I start to think, is that going to happen again? Being in my home alone. But I don't know. I still have the pain in my stomach that I've had since I was a little girl all the time. It's just kind of something I deal with. I don't know if the surgery was the right choice, honestly, because it didn't help. So
did it? If you don't mind me asking, is it a constant pain every day? Do you feel it when you're, running and hiking and all that stuff, or skiing?
I don't feel it as much when I'm working out, because I think every other part of my body hates me at that moment.
Right. You're working out so hard that it's like, I don't feel that.
Like I feel it right now. It's like a dull, achy pain, and sometimes it's much worse, but it's just something I've lived with. So
how do you stay so positive through this? Because that's got to weigh on you a little bit. How do you keep that mindset of just, I know you're not always positive. You're a human being. You have a heart. You have feelings. But talk about that a little bit.
I think it's just something I've learned to shelf since I've felt this pain my whole life, right?
Wow.
I just kind of think it's my norm, which is not fun to think. But once in a while I get discouraged. I'm like, what would I be like if I didn't have to feel this pain every day? And it's not always debilitating, obviously, right? I do anything I want. But isn't that a funny metaphor for all things in life, right? It's like, I mean, truly, like if you're in a bad relationship, or you have physical pain, or there's something from your past that's nagging that you've just never looked at or done the work around, we just learn to live life with that as our baseline. Like I'm carrying this weight or this pain physically or emotionally, and I have to get out of bed in the morning and do my thing. I don't want to play down what others' physical pain or mental, emotional pain is, but I just get up. My stomach hurts and I get up, or I have emotional pain and I got to get to work.
Yeah. Wow. It never ceases to amaze me how powerful the human spirit is. Like the human drive. Again, you're a very driven person, and, and like you said, well, it's always there. I've just dealt with it and I move forward. You and among other millions of other stories out there, but it just blows my mind when I see how powerful we can be. Do you ever look at it that way?
Yeah. Mindset is a very powerful thing. Yeah. And I'm sure we've all seen people with a really positive mindset that are going through just atrocious things. And we think, wow, how are they doing it? Yeah. And then also people that kind of have a negative outlook on on life and everything. And it definitely impacts your experience here, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. And, and again, I'm sorry that you have to deal with that on a daily basis. But again, I don't think you look at it as necessarily a negative, just again, because of the way you live your life, which again is very inspiring.
Well,
I love it.
That's kind of you. Thank you.
Now, I know we mentioned off air too that, you've been through some other challenging things in your life. You went through a divorce. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about that. Obviously, we don't have to have all the details, but just, how you handled that one, because that's another big thing. Anyone listening to this, there's probably a lot of people who have been divorced, and they can relate with this story.
Yeah, sadly, there are a lot of people that have been divorced, and I will be 35 this month. So at this age, and I think we're getting to that phase where people have been married, and sadly, some don't end, in happiness and fairy tales. And I am far enough away now that I can say it was a blessing in disguise, right? You obviously don't think those kind of trials, whether it's, a surgery or an emotional trial or a divorce or something, is a blessing in disguise. That seems a little bit cliche to say, but I am far enough away from some of the hard experiences in my life now to say I wouldn't be the woman I am today if I hadn't gone through that.
Right.
So like you said, I have only lovely things to think about my ex-husband, and
Right.
Not to reveal too much, but it was hard, and we did the best we could to make it really cordial and kind. And I actually want to honor that I think we did a really beautiful job of that, but it doesn't mean it wasn't hard and there wasn't heartache. And, I got married really young. I got married at 22. And after 11 years together, 8 years of marriage, you never think when you get married that it's going to end that way. Right. And so I think that I went through a lot of things, both shame, feeling like a failure. How did I not make the right decision, or try hard enough to make this work, or, trying to really force something and control an outcome. And it was hard. And there were a lot of factors swirling at the same time in my life that made it even more challenging. But to just take that moment as a whole and say, it was hard, and I don't want anyone to think whether it's a kind and gracious parting with a partner or if it's a total mess.
Right.
Both are equally challenging, and I want to honor that for whatever you're going through, for sure.
For sure. Yeah. I've heard this too, and I work with a lot of clients who have been divorced, and even if it's the right thing, it's almost like grieving a loss, a death.
Totally.
You just go through the same grieving process, even though, this is maybe the best thing for both sides. It's still one of those really tough situations. And so, and again, everyone goes through it a little differently, but it's good to hear you say those positive things. You know what? You got nothing good to say, and you guys handled it the best that you could.
It's interesting as you say that. A girlfriend who has also been divorced, she and I were talking a few months ago, and I was like, how do you wrap your brain around that person just not being a part of your life anymore? Because you compared it to, it's almost like a death and you have to grieve it.
Yeah.
But it's, in some ways, it feels more challenging than a death, because this person who I spent over a decade of my life with as my best friend, my partner, my go-to, is now walking around this world somewhere, and I have nothing to do with their life. We have no interactions anymore, just out of respect of moving our own ways. But it's it's kind of messes with your head that this person is still here, and we choose not to see each other or have any interaction after so long being a big part of each other's lives. And sometimes that is what really messes with me. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, that is kind of a mind trip there for sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, again, it's impressive how you've handled it. Granted, I know it's never, it's always a little messy when you go through stuff like that.
Things
but I
of
think
the heart are hard.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know now one of the things that you do is I want you to talk a little bit about your Barefoot Communications and what you do there and why you started this, and you being the introvert, and now here you are helping people break out of their own shells. I love that. So
isn't that ironic, right?
I love it though.
I know. What's funny is people see, I think a lot of us that do television or in front of a camera speak publicly and think like, you have no idea what it feels like to be nervous.
Yeah.
And that's not true. I was a nervous little girl. I remember running for like student body secretary in elementary school in California, and I had to speak in front of the whole student body, and I was terrified.
Yeah.
So that exists definitely still for me. That's not anymore. I can say it's very hard to make me nervous in front of a group of people if I'm prepared, but, there's a couple of different ways it started. I remember my dad was the president of a company growing up, and he would have to give up and give speeches. And I remember like the week that he would have to give a presentation or something like that, being like, what is going on? And my mom one time specifically, I remember being like, he has to speak this week. He's nervous. He's stressed, whatever. And he's always said like, I hate public speaking. And so I remember that and thinking, why does he hate it? And, you know, by high school, I didn't hate it. You know, I was fine with it, and presenting as a student body officer never bugged me. And so my dad actually helped me identify that. We were on this little father-daughter trip driving through Colorado looking at colleges, and he was like, what do you want to do? And I think at that point I was like, you can be a doctor, a lawyer, like you had these options. And I was like, I don't want to be any of those. Thank goodness I'm not. Those would not have been the career for me. And I knew I loved to write. I love writing, and so I love to write. And he's like, well, you're great speaking as well. Like, you're a great public speaker. I'm like, okay, what is that going to do for me? You know, stand-up comedian. I'm not funny. I mean, I think I'm funny. Maybe like Brooke, my co-host, does, but other than that, I'm not. So he was like, what about journalism? And actually I can have him and my stepmom to thank for, as soon as I figured that out, like my sophomore year of high school, they were like, she put me in front of a camera in modeling in an acting agency, which is very not what I do. I'm like, I do not want to be a model. I was a jock. But it gave me some time behind a camera to even build that confidence more. And then that's what I went to school for. So kind of developing that. Ironic that I went to BYU. Actually, they have the #1 broadcasting program in the country, or they did at the time at least. I'm not sure where they're at now. So that felt like the good fit, despite the space I was in with like a religion wasn't necessarily wanted to be, but
it was more going for the program.
And it was great. So fast forward from there, I started this company about 6 years ago, Barefoot Communication, and I was like, there is a need here, a huge need for people. And it's kind of morphed into, I work a lot with people in the tech world, leaders, executives, and CEOs that they're experts on what they do. And then you put a camera in their face or a microphone in their hand and they freeze and don't know anything. And, you know, we see that in the news all the time. You go to do an interview and someone comes on the show, you sit down, it's fun, it's easy, and then the camera goes on and they freeze. It's like, what is happening here? And how can I help people to transition from being these nervous speakers to expert communicators and leaders and really shining in the spotlight? And now it's also in the space where, you know, people that are starting up their own businesses and entrepreneurs that are going to that first round of funding and raising money and looking at investors, how are they pitching their companies? And that matters, making those first impressions. We make a lot of snap judgments. So we want to show up at our best with our presentation skills really polished and dialed in. So
for sure. Oh, that's awesome. Why did you call it Barefoot?
Do you want this story? There's a story behind it.
Absolutely.
And if anyone is listening that knows me, it's kind of like a running joke that I show up places and it's like, where are your shoes? I'm like, listen, I just having my feet on the earth in the mountain. I mean, I have shoes on. You're welcome. But I don't know you. I didn't want to disrespect your office space.
I would have been like, hey, she's got no shoes on. Oh, that's all right.
I just having my feet on the ground feels so grounding to me. It's kind of always been a thing. So that is one thing. But my senior year of high school graduation, I went to a small liberal arts school here in Salt Lake City, and we graduated at a Bravenel Hall downtown. There were just 50 of us. We didn't wear cap and gowns because that was not classy enough. Like, this was an event. So I was in a full white. The women wore like white dresses or skirts, and the men wore suit and tie. And so I just, you know, I kind of walked this line in high school, not kind of, absolutely, being at a school where I wore a uniform and it was like, oh, these are all the rules. I don't love rules of walking this line between like being rebellious, but also getting like good grades and being successful. So I teetered on that. Like, how far can I push the line and still not get kicked out of this school? And so we were graduating, and I was like, I'm the middle of the pack, Hansen, right? H is right in the middle. And you have to walk from one side of the stage all the way across with everyone in the audience watching to our head mistress, dean of the school, for her to hand us the diploma. And so I am in line. They call my name and I walk across the stage barefoot. I'd kicked off my heels and I'm like, this is my final act of rebellion and freedom and whatever. And I walked across the stage and we'd rehearsed. I went to shake her hand and get my diploma, and she just held it with both hands and smiled at me. She's like, basically like, you're not going to make a mockery of my graduation is what it felt like. And she just smiled and she said, go back and get your shoes. And I was in front of this whole auditorium, and I can actually feel my skin
Oh
crawling
my gosh.
right now. And I
Yeah.
was like, blank stare, like, are you serious? And she just nodded, and I knew she was not messing around.
Right.
So I did the walk of shame back to my chair, with the whole audience watching and kind of laughing. And
Yeah.
you're just kind of in that silo where like you
Yeah.
can't hear anything except for your heart
Yep.
beating.
Yeah.
Walked back, shoved my feet in my shoes that felt really restrictive and like a little prison at the time, and walked back, got my diploma, went on. And I remember in that moment thinking, like, my unique, authentic voice doesn't matter. I need to fit in this box and follow the rules in order to be accepted or successful. And that kind of stuck with me for a bit, whether I knew it or not at that moment. And, you know, I had a news director when I was new in my career. I came to a meeting and they were asking for ideas, and I'd come with a pitch, and I pitched an idea, and I was like, I was really new. And that director looked at me and kind of laughed and said, why don't you come back when you have a good idea? And I remember again thinking, okay, like, I'm just going to keep to myself. It doesn't matter what I say. And that went into like personal life too, right? Like not speaking up for myself. I'll absolutely own the pieces of my divorce and marriage not lasting that were my fault. And I didn't live very authentically in that relationship, and I wanted to fit in. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, right? Like, I want to be accepted. I mean, yes, man, I absolutely tried to be what people wanted me to be.
Yeah.
And realistically, I don't know that those people wanted me to be that, but I definitely got feedback that made me feel like I wouldn't be accepted if I wasn't X, Y, and Z. So I changed who I was a lot to be accepted. And, time's gone by, and I just was like, I'm committed. I'm circling back, I promise, to your answer.
This is great. No, you're good.
To like being authentic in who I am. And that is me being barefoot and grounding in who I am, right? And having my feet on the ground just feels really centering. I've always had a really deep connection with nature and Mother Earth, thanks to my mother. And that feels like the way that I ground myself, and was a representation of that. So communicating, kind of like with your feet on the ground, rooted in who you are and being authentic was the premise of that. Do all my clients know that? They just know the name of my business, but that for me is what it is a reminder of.
I love it. Wow, that is so cool. I'm glad I asked you that question.
Thanks.
You know, it's funny. You remind me of my friend. I have one of my best friends, Dean Thompson. We grew up together, and we'd be walking home to my house because my house was close to the junior high. It'd be snowing. He's walking barefoot. When he tried out for the baseball team in high school, he got up to the plate to hit the balls and stuff with no cleats, no shoes, no socks, no nothing. And the coach is looking at him, what are you doing? He's like, I don't need cleats, I don't need shoes. And he's a lot like that.
I like him already.
Yeah, he's amazing. He was really unique. And again, he was just being himself. He wasn't fond of rules either.
Yeah.
You know, but it wasn't because he was trying to be like this bad person. It was just more of, I don't fit in that little cookie cutter box over here. I'm more over here, you know, kind of like what you were saying. And it's unfortunate sometimes that we do shut down and just pretend to be someone we're not, you know. I heard a definition once of what depression is, and it's trying to be someone I'm not. And that's depressing because we're always left empty because I'm over here pretending to be this person. It's not me. You know, so I love the story, you know, and again, I think if I remember correctly, he walked up in graduation, the same thing in high school without his shoes on.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. And let me say this too. I do not disrespect authority.
Sure.
I try to be really respectful. Clearly I did at my 18-year-old self. Didn't have this
you're
established yet. But I don't mean that in a sense of like, I don't like rules. I do what I want. I'm disrespectful. There's obviously times and places to be respectful. I'm in shoes in your office, for example.
Yeah.
Sometimes showing up is not on purpose when I don't have shoes. It just doesn't cross my mind. But I absolutely try to be respectful, but also grounding in who I really am.
No, thank you for sharing that story. That's awesome. I have a question. Like, what do you think is the biggest reason why people shut down, like when the camera turns on? Because you say something happens. Here they are talking freely, no big deal. Camera turns on. What have you figured out? Like, what do you try to train these people to recognize why they shut down?
It's interesting. I ask that question a lot and I have gotten some great feedback from some of my clients. And one of the things that I always say, I'm like, what do you think is going to happen? Like, we're not going to throw tomatoes at you. Like,
Right.
it's not like all of a sudden you're going to be on camera and people are going to boo you, or, I mean, I'm sure people have been booed off stage, but the amount of times that happens, I'm like, you're going to live through this. What's going on?
Yeah.
I mean, I've had people like hyperventilate, almost pass out. People throw up before they come on TV. So it's definitely a real thing. And a lot of the feedback is just humiliation. They're like, I don't want people to think I'm dumb or to say something stupid and people to laugh at me. And I get that. As a little girl, like, I just wanted to be accepted.
Yeah, right.
Oh man, that is rooted deep on so many levels, by my friends, by my parents, by my brother, by a cute boy I liked in 5th grade, whatever it was. Like, we just all want that validation, that positive feedback, and embarrassment is real. That's such a gross feeling,
I know.
And so that's a lot of where that stems from, is people, what if I fail? Or, if you're pitching to an investor, if I mess up, what's on the line? What is it going to cost me, my business, my company, my reputation? So there's a lot of fear behind that, when honestly, the irony behind it is, if you just relax into who you are, you would have been calmer and done better.
Right.
But the nerves are kind of what throw us off sometimes.
Yeah. It's funny. I had a former client of mine, this was a couple years ago, who has a crazy story of overcoming addiction. And he talks freely about it in groups. I sat him right where you're sitting. And as soon as I hit record, he was like, I would ask him a question. He'd be like, I don't know what to say, and he kind of that same thing. He was afraid that maybe he was going to say something that was going to sound stupid or funny or goofy or, but yeah, it was a really real thing for me. He really believed that. I'm like, dude, no, you're great. Just share your stories. So yeah, it happens. People go through that. I always tell people too, they're like, what if I forget the answers? I'm like, you're not going to forget. You're literally the expert on your life or on your business. And I'm like, I know nothing. I'm just here to ask. Yeah, so I'm just here asking some questions. So it's really interesting. Wow. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. It's so cool. So tell us about this new show that you're on, Silicon Slopes. Yeah. So Silicon Slopes is a nonprofit. It's based in Lehigh, and they service the tech world, startup entrepreneur world, right? Okay. A lot of times we're referring to that area down there as the whole thing is Silicon Slopes, kind of like Silicon Valley, which is also accurate. But the actual company provides like education, connecting, and helping people grow and learn as their startups, and kind of in the entrepreneur world. So I am doing a digital daily newscast there. It's called the Caitlin Hansen Show. They named it. My goodness, that's feels like a lot, but it's on a platform I love it. Called CEO.com. So really just kind of like where leaders start their day is the idea. And right now I'm covering mostly, stuff that is in business and finance and tech, and just like a little daily soapbox for me to kind of rant about what I think about the latest topics. And it's been an adjustment coming from, I'm still working at KUTV doing some freelance stuff there, but coming from a world of, hosting our travel show and our talk show and having co-hosts and doing kind of, fun, lighthearted news to transferring into this more business tech side has been a challenge. I research and write and produce and host all my own shows. Oh, really? Okay. So it's fun. Full service, all from you. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And you said it's challenging because you've been in TV for so long. This is something new. Challenging in a different way, just because of the content. Gotcha. I love business and finance. It's just not what I've been covering. So I'm learning. Love it. Well, so what other things do you have on your horizon that you're doing? Is there any new things coming up, or is this kind of where you're at for now? Oh my gosh, this feels very new for now. So definitely diving into this, still doing the coaching, executive coaching stuff on the side. And I feel like when people ask me what I do, I'm like, oh, don't even ask. It's a lot. I still dabble in the fitness world. I've been a coach and personal trainer doing that for a long time. That's taken a little bit of a back seat, but I love that. I'm very passionate about that because of my athletic background and career. And so and plus you do a weekly podcast, Living Unscripted. Mm-hmm. You do that once a week, which is really cool. You're doing a lot. I know, it's kind of ridiculous. I kind of feel like I'm in a phase right now in life. I'm
I'm single. I don't have children.
Right.
I don't have a dog. My plants are struggling. That's another story. But the responsibility gets to be a little more selfish right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think we can always look forward and think, oh, when I have a partner, when I have a family, then I'll be happy. And right now I'm just like, I am single and I don't want to miss that. I want to be present in it, and I'm going to work hard and
enjoy the journey,
run around and not sleep enough and pack my schedule because I can. And someday that will slow down. So right now I'm just going to live that up.
Enjoy it while you can. Yeah. I love that. I'm going to ask you another question here. What do you love most about you?
Wow. What do I love the most about me? This has not always been the case, and it is now, so that feels good.
Yeah.
But I love how deeply I feel. A lot of people may relate to it as like an empath. I don't want to put a label on it, but I definitely feel the highs and the lows, and I feel them very deeply.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're feeling the lows, I wish I could just shut that off.
Right. Sure.
But, because I feel all the pleasure and all the pain really intensely, you get that full spectrum. And that used to be something that I didn't like, and I tried to shut off. And I have some feedback from my past that was kind of a hard limiting belief for a while, that I was too emotionally needy or too emotional. And that was something I was like, oh, I don't want to be that. Be tough. Put on this front. I'm fine. Everything's fine. Let's not talk about it. And I love that about me. I love that I can feel deeply, and I can sit with other people who are feeling deeply and connect. And it feels like a gift now that I've settled into that and accepted that and feel like, this is who I am. And I'm emotional and I'm mushy and I want to love and touch and feel all the things that come at me in life and not hide those away anymore. And I think this is a thing that we face a lot with our society, is it's like, buck up. Yeah. So why are you crying, right? There's no crying in baseball. Like, we're here to be tough and allowing space to say, like, feel whatever you're feeling. That's fine.
Love that. Great response. I love that. That's a great answer to that. If I have another question, and then we'll wrap some things up here, but if there's someone listening to your story right now that may be in a place where they're struggling, you've been through some difficulties yourself, what advice could you give them? I mean, you've shared some good things already, but what would you tell that one person right now who may be in this dark place?
Wow. First of all, I don't feel qualified to be giving anyone advice, but maybe just a lesson from what I've learned. Let me think about how I want to say this. One of the biggest lessons in my life that I feel like I can continuously go back and look at what was I not doing in those hard moments, was just being true to me. And that feels a little bit cliche, but let me expand upon that.
Sure.
I've spent a lot of time in life thinking I was abandoned, and not intentionally, not by unkind people, but, by, they abandoned me, whether it was someone I was, dating, or a parent, or, whatever these feelings and times in life where I was like, that I was abandoned. The biggest thing I've realized is, like, in those moments, I was really abandoning myself. And it starts with me. And I abandon myself every time I'm not living authentically. And I abandon myself every time I become a people pleaser and try to dumb down my emotions or my feelings and be tough and fit into the box. And I just think in those hard moments when I could have been true to me and said, what do I want?
Right.
Like, how can I not abandon myself in these hard moments?
Wow.
And that's been a huge learning curve for me, and something that sometimes you fall back into those patterns and think, I don't want to make them mad. But truly, how can you respect you and be there for yourself first? Because we put a lot of pressure on other people to, show up for us. Like, you left me and I need you to make me happy and fulfilled, especially in partnerships, right?
Yeah,
like
right.
You don't make me happy. Well, guess what? Actually, at the end of the day, it's our own job to make ourselves happy. And I don't know if that is a good answer, but that's the thing that I've definitely come back to the most is like, the buck stops at me. Yeah. And I need to show up for myself first before I blame other people and point the finger.
Man, beautifully said. No, that was spot on. And I agree with you 100%. I've noticed, and tell me if you agree, when I really start taking charge of my life, like my happiness has to come from within me. It's interesting that people start falling into my life who will support that. It's so interesting. But when I'm pointing fingers and blaming everybody else, it's like no one wants to help me in that moment. It seems like, but they wanted to go, hey, quit playing the victim. But again, it's okay that you're struggling, but really start working on that authentic you. And I love what you said there. Start respecting you. I love that.
It starts with us, right?
It really does.
Because at the end of the day, if you lose your job, if you get divorced, if something hopefully not tragic happens to someone you love in life, or something that brought you joy, then what? Right. Who are we when all that falls away? Are you happy with you? Can you make yourself happy? Yeah. Or is it all dependent on the external things?
Wow. Beautifully said. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, Caitlin.
Thank you so much for having me.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate that and being vulnerable and sharing some of these difficulties that you've gone through as well. I really appreciate that so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, there we go, folks. I want to also have our listeners be able to, how can they get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you or, get in touch with Barefoot Communications or anything that you're doing? What's the best way for them to do that?
You can always find me on social media, I guess, is one way. I do some of my business stuff through there. Okay. And that is Caitlin H. Hansen, on all the things. And then, hop on my website, barefoot-communication.com. I'm here to answer any questions.
Love it.
About work and stuff like that, or just say hello.
Okay. Love it. Well, there you go, folks. Reach out to Caitlin if you want to ask her a question or see what she's doing, or if you want to use her services, her coaching and all that. If you struggle speaking and you want to get better at it, reach out to her and use her services. I think that'd be fantastic. So I told you this was going to be great. Thank you for tuning in. If you know someone that can benefit from this, please share this episode with your family and friends and anyone who may be struggling. That advice was spot on, and just grateful for you guys. And once again, Caitlin, thank you for your time today.
Thanks.